Hello, people of YouTube land, those that are part of the Cringe Crew gaming community Discord, those that follow Ted and I on Twitch, and whoever's listening to this on Spotify or whatever, audio stream platform that we decide to post this. This is the Cringe Crew gaming movie review podcast, and this is Friday the 13th. And, this obviously isn't Friday the 13th, but we're reviewing Friday the 13th to conclude this week. Maybe.
Yeah, it does conclude this week. This is our last one on the schedule.
Right. But that being said, guess we'll go into background, then Ted will explain the plot, unless Ted wants to explain the plot to begin with.
No, you have at it. You need to jog my memory, because we have been pushing this one off for like 2 weeks.
Alright, Christ. Alright, so Friday the 13th, released in 1980, directed by Sean S. Cunningham. Obviously, he is known for this. Also, he worked as a collaborative producer with Wes Craven on Last House on the Left, and also directed comedy known as Spring Break. He also directed another horror film by the name of Deep Star 6, and a couple basically other films that I don't really recognize. Basically, this is kind of the big one that he, is most famous for, that he directed. Released in May 9th, 1980, had a budget of $550,000 and had a box office return of $59.8 million. Now, this movie got made because John Carpenter's Halloween was a huge hit, and director Sean S. Cunningham, wanted to direct his own slasher, which, although not confirmed by Sean S. Cunningham, there are speculations that this was loosely inspired by the Lake Bodom murders that happened in Finland. Also serves as inspiration of the heavy metal band Children of Bodom, but that's neither here nor there. But those murders are actually still unsolved. But pretty much it's widely speculated, since those murders happened by a lake, and this happens by a damn lake, and that's really the only connection. But that being said, Sean S. Cunningham pretty much wanting to distance himself from the horror film Last House on the Left, wanted to make Friday the 13th a roller coaster ride of pretty much making a film that was visually stunning and make you jump out of your seat, which I guess he felt Last House on the Left wasn't that type of movie, even though that movie has a reputation for being very, very being a very graphic horror film, much as this movie. But that being said, the screenplay was completed in mid-1979 by Victor Miller, who would go on to write for several soap operas, including Guiding Light, One Life to Live, and All My Children. Also, Miller was, despite being a huge fan of this movie being made, he was not a fan of the sequels, and we'll get into that when we I guess I can go into when we get into kind of like spoilers for like likes and dislikes.
Sure.
So I'll skip out why like he doesn't care for like the later ones. Also, they end due to his work on Dawn of the Dead. They picked up legendary prosthetic makeup artist and actor Tom Savini, who also did a lot of the makeup work and special effects for movies like Martin, Creep Show, Monkey Shines, Maniac, The Burning, The Prowler, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and also had a bit parts in From Dusk Till Dawn, Planet Terror, Machete, Django Unchained, and of course Machete Kills. So that being said, we'll go into casting. Due to the budget, they basically had to have a cast of like fairly unknown actors, at least at the time, with not saying that none of these actors had any like acting experience, but at the time, with the exception as with Betsy Palmer, who only did this movie because she needed a new car and was offered $10,000, which is the exact amount that she needed to buy the car that she wanted. And fun fact that when she got the script, she thought the movie was just going to be like a pile of shit, and no one was going to talk about it after the movie was had, and to her, so she was thinking, all right, well, this isn't going to affect my career too much, with her previously being a movie actress, but more predominantly known for her television work. She was on like a panel on the game show I've Got a Secret, and she also was involved in a lot of stage work. This movie here was actually the first movie she did since 1968. So like it was she been out of there for a while. For other Now, I am not going to reveal too much about who Betsy Palmer plays, but she plays like a former cook of the of Camp Crystal Lake. We have Adrien King as Alice, and spoiler alert, she is the final girl in this movie. Adrien King had previous acting experience in soap operas. Same goes with actors Laurie Bartram, who plays Brenda, and probably the biggest name that came out of this, Kevin Bacon as Jack. Other members of the cast, we have Harry Crosby as Bill, Janine Taylor as Marcy, Mark Nelson as Ned, Peter Brower as Steve Christie, who's reopening Camp Crystal Lake, and Robbie Morgan as Annie. And oddly enough, Adrien King's character of Alice Hardy was originally going to be played by Sally Fields. I'm sorry, Sally Field, not Sally Fields, but Sally Field. But obviously, with the budget, they would have to, it would go over budget, and so therefore, no big actors at the time that, since, Kevin Bacon's in this. That being said, obviously this movie was a huge success and had a ton of sequels of varying quality. So I guess we'll get into what this movie's about. It's your kind of your stereotypical slasher, bunch of like there was a murder that happened that closed this camp. The camp's reopening, and then murders start happening to like the camp counselors are trying to reopen the camp.
That about sums it up.
Yep. And so I guess that goes into likes and dislikes. What would you prefer to start with?
Let's do likes. From what I can remember, because I didn't take myself very expansive notes. What's her name's acting was really good.
Betsy Palmer.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what we're holding on to it for. So it's the original murder victim's mom is Betsy Palmer.
Yeah, I mean, not original. I mean, yeah, Jason drowns.
Yeah,
and then Jason's technically like not in this movie. I mean, he is at the very end in like a dream sequence, but
dumbest fucking dumb shit. Anyway,
which is originally not supposed to be in the script. They just added in there because they needed one more scare, and the script writer hates the sequels because to him, and it's also why Tom Savini didn't do any of the sequels with the exception of the fourth one because they killed Jason off because even he thought it was kind of stupid that Jason came back because he was a kid that drowned.
Yeah, we're not to dislikes yet. We'll fucking get there. She did a great job acting. She was the perfect breed.
Terrifying.
She was a perfect breed of fucking crazy, dude. Like it was pretty brutal. You could feel the passion and emotion in her eye. Like it was kind of nuts.
Like especially like at the beginning, she's just like, "Well, I'm not afraid." Like she seems so very. It's honestly kind of like. I guess what you could say is like a mama bear, as in like, she's killing these counselors so that way they don't reopen the camp that she views as, taking away her son. So therefore, she sees herself as protecting future children of going to the camp. And so therefore could be viewed as a very scary, overprotective mother. And so you have like the mother nurtureness that she has at the beginning, but then as soon as like, it's I wouldn't say it's revealed because like our friend Mike Riot was gonna be in here because this is one of his favorite movie franchises. But he was watching this and actually said, the best part about it is that as soon as she pops up, it's her right away.
Yeah, that's true.
And
I just think her performance is really good. Like all of it's believable. It's very convincing, which isn't necessarily like at a premium, like in the horror genre of this era, or especially in the slasher genre. Like,
yeah,
I just think that this acting performance like really sells the film.
Yeah, I will say this: most of the acting in this movie is like, I wouldn't say like, I'm not saying it's spectacular, but like it's not like somebody was writing this didn't know how people like interacted with each other, like with the exception of probably like the cop and then also Crazy Ralph that's like, oh, you're all doomed and everything. It seems like very normal performances as opposed to Halloween.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, everybody seemed like very realistic in their roles. As for other likes, I personally find it kind of interesting that if you look into this movie like farther than you should. What I mean by that is that if you overanalyze this, you can actually like detect that every murder has like a trigger beforehand. It's like she gets triggered before like a murder kind of like happens. Like she's talking to like the first person that gets killed. And then she talks about how she would, she's like the new cook. Well, Mrs. Voorhees was a cook, so therefore, triggers back to like the past and stuff. Oh, and constant other things with her just like kind of stalking each and every Teed and then, murdering them. You can kind of relate that to like her spying on them and whatever incident that they do triggers her to, murder the subsequent person. So like it's not just that there's kind of like a deranged killer killing like at random. Like yes, it's like there's a motive, but at the same time it's like it's like a triggered motive, if that makes sense.
Kinda, yeah.
Which I find very interesting. I don't know if that's done on purpose or if I'm just way looking into it.
I don't know. I mean, now that you bring it up, I guess it makes sense. I don't know. I don't want to jump the gun here, but like I guess like I don't get it. Right? Like when you like as you mentioned that there's a trigger to each of those points, right? Like I guess it gives every individual moment like a small purpose. But the idea that like protecting her son, like what is killing more kids going to protect them from? Like it just kind of I don't get it. So I guess I can appreciate the fact that like each of her individual kills is just like triggering a deranged woman. So I mean,
yeah,
I get it.
That being said, when it comes to like the kills, special effects are for the most part really good, especially Kevin Bacon's death. Like that, like the arrow going through his throat, like from underneath the bed, is just flawless.
Yeah, they do a pretty good job at like making it believable. I think the lighting and the camera work helps a lot too.
Which is beautiful in this movie, to be honest. Like
it makes it really easy to buy into what's happening. I remember one of the scenes as they're like the camera is panning on the outside windows and you're following the story that's happening inside, and like even those kind of cameras give the impression that like they're being watched and stalked and like the urgency of the moment, but then them being just kind of blissfully unaware, like I think that the camera is like super intentional in this and it feels pretty good the whole time.
And I also love like the editing does like a lot of like cool establishing shots where you can actually kind of place how the camp's laid out, especially with like how like a lot of the murders like are in like a small like part of an area where it's like, okay, so these murders are happening on this side of the camp, and then all of a sudden like it's like Mrs. Voorhees is like making her way towards like different parts of like the camp, and you can kind of map how the camp's actually laid out, which I haven't really seen in like a slasher film, where they have like shit. I was gonna say where you actually kind of do a little bit of like world building of like about the area that you're in,
It's fair. I guess for the most part, it's like kind of unnecessary, but I mean, it is kind of neat that they do it.
Christ, what? First, I remember the sound was all right. I mean, it has an iconic soundtrack, but especially with like the noise of the which is kind of corny by today's standards, but it does give you a little bit of suspense in this movie, despite it being a little bit of a slow burn, but when it hits, but there is quite a bit of like tension that does get built up with like how the camera is shown to be, stalking these oblivious, camp counselors.
Yeah, I agree.
I will also say that despite it being just like your run-of-the-mill slasher, I think this one, like, out of all like the classic like slashers, at least the ones that we've seen, I think this one, with the exception of Scream, of course, but I think this one's honestly the best well done. If that makes sense.
Probably. It feels the most complete. I'd agree with you, I think.
Like, and I'm not saying like it's the greatest slasher film or greatest horror film ever, but like, I guess you could describe it kind of like Citizen Kane, where it like checks all the boxes.
I feel like that's a pretty gigantic leap, but okay. No, I get it though. Like, I mean, it is a pretty cut and dry, to the point slasher. I guess, again, to jump into dislikes, I guess I just don't get it, right? And the idea that like, yeah, I mean, it hit all the boxes. It wasn't a bad movie. It wasn't unenjoyable, right? But there was so much that just like, yeah, but why? Like, there was nothing that really like. You can watch other movies like Scream is the perfect example, since you brought it up, right? That like, I'm not going to say that movie is an art form, right? But I also understand why it creates a cult around it, why it has become pop culture. I don't understand like this one.
How this spawned Jason. Honestly, I kind of equate this with like Fast and the Furious, Like the original Fast and the Furious was like a well done, generic action movie. Like, it's not bad. It's good. It does what it's supposed to do. And then look what it's all came from that,
Well, and it just, like, even without seeing any of the sequels, right? Like, this obviously loses the plot. Like, my kid drowned, so I'm a deranged woman and I'm stabbing kids at a camp, right? That shouldn't create, like, a stable, like, horror villain, I guess, like, with a hockey mask. Like, where the fuck, what the fuck is that all about? You know what I mean? Like, it's right. Just, it loses the plot, right? Like, to have created a cult for people that love Jason Voorhees or the Friday the 13th franchise, whatever. Like, it's just, I don't get it, man. Nothing about this movie screams create a cult classic out of this. Like, make this a really popular thing. It just, it's good. It's fine. It hits, like you said, it hits all the boxes. I'm not complaining. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I just don't get it.
Right. It is very weird how like this series came from, and that's where it started. Which, I do have to say that the cult following, to anybody that's that hasn't like seen like a Friday the 13th movie or like this one, but is familiar with like Jason Voorhees and all that stuff, if they have no like idea that Jason's not supposed to be in this, it does throw, the reveal is pretty great,
I mean, I guess,
because you have people like you're gonna go, oh, it's Jason, I can't wait to see what's the reveal with Jason. It's like, nope, it's his mom. I love how this movie, like, retrospectively kind of like makes you lead to believe that it is Jason how much killing these kids.
How much of that though is hindsight, right? Like, that may not have been true when this movie came out,
No, and
like, it's just the fact that we've lost the plot and gotten these weird ass sequels that have nothing to do with this one other than the namesake of this fucking hockey mask wearing slasher. Dude. Like, it's goofy.
True. And but I was gonna say, but on top of that, even if you're unfamiliar with everything, if it's the first time that you've seen it, they do come up with like at least like 2 or 3 like different like suspects, if that makes sense. Like, it could be like Steve Christie, like the owner of the camp, because like you see that he drives a Jeep, but so does Mrs. Voorhees, and you don't see Mrs. Voorhees, you just see like the Jeep, so therefore you think it might be Steve Christie killing everybody, especially since like, you know, he's creeping on one of the camp counselors. You also have that crazy Ralph guy, and you also have the weird police officer that, you know, can't ride a motorcycle to save his damn life. Which I do have to say, there are like parts where like the acting of that motorcycle, the police officer on the motorcycle. God, I'm getting all tongue tied. His acting's terrible and very unbelievable. He's just basically like, you know, your stereotypical, you know, police officer, like, kids, stop messing around, you know. And
I mean, it was a bit part for all intents and purposes, yeah.
To me, that just seems like, why is that there?
Well, I guess I feel that way a little bit, like, in general, right? Like I mentioned earlier, right? How does killing kids protect them from the camp that's going to kill them, right? Like, I guess just, like, you know, there's a chain of, like, if you think about it, like, any critical thinking ruins a whole lot of this movie. And
right.
It doesn't get in the way. Like, it's not big, glaring, obvious things that are like, this movie is unwatchable, right? But, like, if you do anything other than shut your brain off and watch, you're breaking holes left, right, and sideways.
Right. But that being said, I do think that this is still kind of a, even though Jason doesn't show up to the sequel and he doesn't get the hockey mask to the third one, I think that this is honestly probably, like, you know, for like a good classic like slasher film, this is definitely must see. And I honestly think that this is probably better than Halloween. I don't know. I feel bad that we kind of watched Halloween, because like I really remember Halloween being great, and then just me just going, meh.
Yeah, I think sometimes, like, the legend of these horror movies outlives the horror movies themselves. Yeah. It's really hard to keep these things, like, relevant and up to the standard in which we can create movies today.
Yeah, and what's funny is that how I thought with this one, it's like, yeah, it's not as good as Halloween. This is like, you know, this was just a Halloween ripoff that just somehow spawned, like, got way bigger than it was supposed to be. And to me, like, I honestly think this was what I expected Halloween to be, you know?
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
That makes sense.
I guess that's fair.
And so therefore I think that this is definitely like something that I think has aged fairly well, and that a modern, you know, someone that's more into, like, you know, modern horror movies and stuff could go back and watch this without, you know, cringing and being bored, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. I think that this, more than most of the others we've watched this week, like, has it meets current standards. Like Hellraiser, okay, I guess, like, it looks more modern, but this one holds up better than a lot of the stuff we've watched this month, to be honest.
I completely agree. That being said, shall we talk about the surprise?
Nope. No, we're not. Nope. See you all on Tuesday or whatever day Halloween is, and I didn't say it.
Right. And that being said, I thought this was going to be on Halloween, hence why I'm dressed up like a freaking lumberjack, but I'm an idiot.
Yeah, so, no, today's just Friday. We'll see you on Halloween. Or we won't. You never know.
Never know. That being said, hit the outro, Ted.
But yeah, so this will be our last movie podcast for a while. Hint, hint, wink, wink. We'll probably pick it up again after football season when my schedule is less fucking chaotic. So if there's any directors or whoever that you want to see, any styles, anything we should get back to, drop some comments. Let us fucking know. We like watching movies every week, so it's pretty cool. As always, you can hop in the Discord and watch movies with us. We do a whole bunch of watch parties and stuff. So the link will be in the description for that. If you're interested in our own content, you can find us both on Twitch, Stahlman at Traductus, and myself at Ted Green Eagles. With that being said, we definitely will not see you here next week for a Halloween episode. Don't even think about it. And then we'll see you next time. Have a good one.
Yep. Later.